So we continue. Long block. So ordered a long block for this guy. Unfortunately, I had a bolt shear off on the other head that in order to fix that, I'm gonna have to replace the head. And if you watch the other video, the engine is pretty well loved. So this is my personal engine for my personal mower. It has over 4,500 hours on it. So it's seen a large amount of work. I owned a landscape maintenance business, did that for over 21 years. I enjoyed it until my body just couldn't handle it anymore. So I got into this business as a long story short. So now what we got to do is we got to transfer everything over to this new long block engine that I just pulled out of this box here. If you're interested, my Kohler engine is an EFI model, so it's the ECV 650. The part number for the long block is 2452305, and in that box what you get is a long block which contains the bottom end and your top end, so your heads. So a short block would contain everything on the bottom side without the heads. What you have to do with long blocks, of course, is transfer all your some studs and stuff. In this case, they do have the exhaust studs, which is nice. You know, your covers, your ECU, in this case, your intake and all that on your long block. So we're gonna go ahead in this video transfer all the components from my old engine onto this new long block. So we're gonna just kind of tip it over like so. On this, we're gonna go ahead and start pulling the engine cover off. What I also recommend before you get started, if you're doing a lot of this yourself, take lots of pictures of everything. And as you take things off, kind of place them neatly off to the side. I'll try to show some of that stuff as I go through this process. So that's my voltage regulator there. I'm not going to pull that off. It's attached to this, not necessary, but we do want to get all this other stuff off. Bolt down here, which is also 8mm for this ground strap for the AVR. So this is our engine cover, of course, and I just try to lay everything out. So what I'm gonna do is, as you can see, there's a bolt that goes there, took that one out and took that one out there. Just kind of lay them out off to the side. And then our fan, I'm gonna set it on top. The reason why I like to set it on top, it's just a reminder, I need to get that piece on first before I put the cover on. We also gotta pull the flywheel, so there's a lot we gotta do here. And again, since this is EFI, you're gonna see a lot more going on, like our injectors, our, this is for ignition timing. It's basically a Hall effect sensor sensing each time that this moves around. And then the ECU makes adjustments and everything. Now, unfortunately, along the way, I'm probably gonna have some more seized bolts that I'm eventually gonna have to replace. Okay. Before I can pull this off, I need to pull my sensor here off. Now I'm just taking great care when I go to try to loosen these bolts, just gently, start slow. Now, I have never had to do a long block on this style of engine, so this is a first for me. So just so I make note of where everything is, how it was routed, I'm just going to take a few personal pictures Always recommend doing it. Take more, you know, than necessary, because trust me, looking at a parts diagram isn't going to tell you anything. So now I'm going to set this over here off to the side. Generally, you can do the shock method, where basically you're going to want to run this in, and then you can pry a little bit and then tap it real good. On this, I think I see some threads. Let me check real quick. Let me grab my air. Yeah, and it is threaded. So for me, because I don't like where I'm seeing things, use a puller, in my case, to pull this one off. So what I'm gonna do is spray a little WD down those holes. Now, there's all kinds of kits out there. You don't have to always go out and get, you know, the most expensive kit to achieve your jobs. As you can see, this is a Harbor Freight special, and I've had no issues with this particular kit especially. Okay, so let's see what threads these are. Now, what I always recommend, especially some of these cheaper kits and stuff, you know, it's going to be pushing a lot of pressure on here. So you can always apply a little bit of grease along here to help make it so this moves nicely. And because I don't care about this block, and it does have a taper spot right here, and the threads are deeper. So even if you were to do this, you could and try to save this shaft, you can do this just fine with this particular puller. So let me apply a little bit of grease or oil. So I'm just grabbing a little bit of moly grease here, applying it on here, just to allow this to roll a little bit better. So then, looks like we are only working with 2 spots, so I can work on top or bottom or side to side. And let me grab some washers. This is where you can add washers to your kit. So in my case, I grabbed some body washers, another washer I can throw on top, because you're just gonna, you know, eventually trash these anyway. Just to provide more surface area over that. Okay, so these bolts are not long enough. You don't want a couple threads. You want, you know, a good few threads going in. And with this kit, it provides a couple longer ones. Let me make sure these are right. Yep. And I like to put a few washers on, because usually some of these can take quite a bit to pull. Now, when you go to raise this up, try to make sure it's level. You don't want to be pulling at an angle. There we go. But yeah, most of the time I actually do the hammer method and stuff. Haven't had any issues with that. I don't have an extra bolt that I want to run through in this output shaft. I'm trying to save the one that I have on there, because sometimes when you hammer on there, they can shroom out. So you really don't want to do that on those. Then we can pull this guy out. And we don't want to forget our little key here. Usually there's a little Woodruff key. Open. Well, I don't want to damage that. Oh, actually, so my stator here, stationary, this is part of the AC. So these windings here, this is what we call our stator. And how this works is as this flywheel spins, you have magnets on here. As you can see, there's a positive, negative, positive, well, positive, negative, you know, it's one of those kind of things. Now, I've had these pop off before, not on my particular engine or this particular engine, but on some other ones, and they were pretty, they were in good condition, and I have JB welded them back on, and I had everything work. So you can put them back together if they start to shift and start to come off, as long as they don't blow up, meaning that they hit things and then they shatter. But if they shift it because the adhesive that they're using wears off for whatever reason, it is possible to rebuild them, but you have to make sure that you understand what is positive, negative, positive, and there's ways you can do that with a magnet to help kind of guide you on what you need to do, and then I wrote out on them before. But anyway, so you have your magnets here, and as the engine, this rotates, excuse me, it creates an AC signal, and then that gets fed to these two wires here. So we have a white and a white on both sides of this. So creating an AC signal, and that AC signal can be, I think it's 24 plus AC, plus or minus. I think it can get up in there like 30 something. I can't remember exactly right offhand, but it's up there. And what that does to your voltage regulator, which is this guy here off the side of the engine that this was plugged into, it's taking that AC signal, converted it into DC, which is then, with that voltage regulator, which is then feeding the 12 volts back to the battery to charge it. That's that 14, you know, 0.35, etc. So that's basically how your charging system essentially is working. Now, it looks like this ring here, which I confirmed by looking right here, I could pry against that. So I just wanted to make sure before I start prying to get my woodruff key out. And there we go. So that's the woodruff key for the flywheel. Now that we got that flywheel off, I'm going to go ahead and pull this tin off. And we are going to clean pretty much all of this stuff before we put it back on. And I'm always paying attention. Is there anything going, is there longer bolts as I take them off? So always kind of keep track of that. So yeah, as you can see, there's some more stuff here attached, some of the shields, wiring looms. So that's probably about as far as I can go right now with that piece. This is what led to our demise with this engine. So this is our throttle arm. Comes up, and then you can adjust the throttle for this EFI engine. And let me turn this around. And it's supposed to be bolted up right here and right here, and this bolt here sheared off. I can't get it off, even with welding tricks and stuff, just couldn't get it off. Make sure you take pictures of this stuff here, like where it's set on the governor. And then like, you know, your throttle and stuff, that could easily get pushed in there. If not careful, this governor spring can get positioned in multiple different places. I'm wanting this back exactly how it was, so definitely take pictures. More pictures, the better. Easy things to kind of reference if you have to. So I'm going to pop the spring off there. So that pops it off to the side and you can pull up. And then we want to disconnect the spring. This is what we call our anti-lash spring. So it takes out the lash, especially if you get a little bit of lash in this hole here. And what I mean by lash is, say for example this was connected, see how much play is there. Now the spring can do is help take that out along with this piece. So let's pull this off. I know it might seem like a daunting task, but it really is not that bad. Even if you didn't take pictures, eventually you can figure it out. It just means more time that you're going to be spending when you really don't need to. And then I'm keeping bolts and stuff together. I'm laying things out. Let's get this shield off. So I'm going to disconnect these two sensors here. That comes out. I'm just gonna set this bolt back in right here. This one I probably don't need because I believe it's on the other engine. This breather and this gasket is reusable. So I'm just gonna put it back on. And as you can see, I'm just kind of slowly taking things apart and laying them roughly as they come out, kind of in order, so I can easily, quickly move some things. These exhaust bolts off. I think I have new ones. Now, I've seen people, especially with carbureted engines, they'll take these off and then they don't understand why their engine's high revving. It is very important that you set the governor, and you'll have to turn this in a certain position. Usually I think it's like full throttle. I'm gonna have to double check the service manual on this engine, but usually it's like full throttle, counterclockwise on that at full throttle. So you get the governor arm set in the proper position. So the whole idea is when the engine fires off, the governor will throw this arm down at an idle position, which is actually down. Yeah, in this case it pulls it down. And then it's supposed to throw it down in an idle position. If it's not doing that and it's high revving, it's because this is usually set in the wrong position, or some of your linkages are jammed up and it's usually in an open position. So now I'm going to set this off to the side too. Now what I'm going to do in this case, because there's a few things I can kind of transfer, because let me cut this off. So as you go to take things apart, there are certain things that you could just set in place. Like for example, these bolts here go right here. And unfortunately, they are not already tapped, but I can at least kind of get it started. So on these, you can see they're not tapped. It's just a plain hole. And these bolts are what we call self-tappers. They kind of look triangle-ish instead of completely round. So these are used to help self-tap. So if you find certain things are not or already tapped, that's partly why. Now do the same thing on this one. Get this bolt off. I'm just going to set it right here. There we go. Kind of having to jam it a little bit. So we're going to continue on this side. I'm going to disconnect the spark plug wire here. So I already got the bolt off under here, And there's another one right up there that's 8 mil. Let's see, this is attached. So since I took this off and it's 10, I'm going to screw it back in to its spot. And that's part of that whole cover on top. And then this here, again, like I said, just take pictures along the way. Just want to make sure everything's properly routed as quick as possible versus me spending a whole bunch of time trying to figure out. A lot of this stuff should be able to come off nicely. In fact, I could probably leave this in place and just unbolt it there. Yeah, just take your time with some of these bolts. And when I put this back together, I'm gonna put anti-seize on every bolt. That's just how I do it. You don't have to do that, but that's how I do it. Now, since I took it off here on the top, next to this intake, I'm gonna put it right here. Again, this is also one of those self-tappers. You can see it's triangle-ish. And then right up here, it's smooth. So I'm just gonna kind of, I wouldn't say cross-threading, but starting it essentially. That way that's in place. So now this whole piece can come up with my intake assembly, and everything else is good on this side. So basically I should only have to take these 2 intake bolts out, and then do the same thing on that side, and I should be clear with this. So let's move this around, kind of rotate it. Now, of course, I could have bought a whole new engine, but then for this, I'd be spending over another $1,000 to do that. And what's the fun in that? Like, it's not necessary. I mean, all this other stuff would have gone in the bin, essentially, or I would have, you know, kept it for parts, but I don't need to hold on to a whole bunch of stuff if I can help it. Then use some blocks if you have to help kind of make sure certain things don't roll on you. Okay, so we need to get this shield off, and in order to do that, let's roll this one down a little bit. We have our fuel pump. So on this EFI engine, how this works is I have a low pressure fuel pump that's usually mounted, it's somewhere, it's like here, oh yeah, it's right here. So you have your low pressure fuel pump, pumps up, fills up this cavity, which actually contains a high pressure fuel pump. There's actually a little float in here. And as it fills up and builds up pressure, that float closes, which shuts the fuel pump off, and it turns it on and off as necessary, and then provides high pressure to the fuel rails. So that's kind of how this particular system works. I know there's a lot of people out there that really do not like EFI. I personally, I love it. I love it. The horsepower gain and is definitely beneficial. The reliability, it is just way better, and it's just much more efficient, along with, I've never had to deal with carburetor issues ever since after I went to EFI for my personal stuff. And especially for business, I personally recommend EFI all the way if you want efficiency and less downtime, especially when it comes to carburetors. And these things can just sit for a lot longer period of time in what I call gas abuse. We just get so spoiled with EFI, especially in our vehicles today, that a lot of people don't understand carburetors anymore, and it's you know, I have to explain to customers all the time, like, hey, you know, you can't keep the choke on all the time 100% when trying to start your stuff, because you're now flooding it. You're having to act as the computer, whereas the computer's doing all the work, all the thinking for you. So we get kind of spoiled, especially today, because all our vehicles these days are EFI. Okay, so what I had to do there is I had to pull the fuel pump bolts off. These are just standard bolts with a little flange in this plastic piece here that I'm pulling off. Unfortunately, so far all of these bolts are coming off nicely, unlike a few that are over at the heads, which makes sense because it usually sees a lot more temp. Okay, I just noticed I pulled a little spacer here. These are important in terms of when I go to tighten this down. The spacer here is to help prevent me from crushing this plastic in. That's why these are important. So if they come out, make sure you put them back in. You can see it came out there. This one's still in here. Looks like there's another one up above. There we go. Well, that's interesting. I don't know what that was in there for, unless that was something I dropped earlier. So as you can see here, there's the little spacer that came out, and that goes right in like that. Because if you didn't have that there, what happens is as you tighten this, it smushes down, flattens out this plastic, and eventually you dig a hole in it, and then this is no longer retained. So all these bolts are the same for this. So I'm gonna go set it off to the side, and let's get that off. I won't need that valve cover bolt, so I'm just gonna set that one back in. Now, what am I gonna do with this engine? Overall, for me personally, I'm gonna pull the heads. I'm gonna pull the new head mainly. I'm gonna pull this head. There's probably a couple things I'll keep on that. But outside of that, probably the push rods, just for shop purposes, for bleeding down hydraulic lifters, you know, outside of it, in my drill press, essentially, if I wanted to. So there's a few. I'm gonna keep it for a little bit, and then I'm gonna toss the block because it's no good. Okay, so this drain hose here, I'll need to transfer. I'm not gonna transfer this oil filter. We're gonna put new on here. We have a breather tube in the crankcase. So here's our breather tube, comes out, comes up, goes up to our fuel pump. And on the new block, you can see right here, it's right here on the side. So we're gonna wanna disconnect that. And what I'm going to do is I'm trying to get some of this removed in groups, in clusters, in hopes to make my job as easy as possible. It's not always the case. What I'm going to do is kind of pry on it, which will probably, there we go, we're able to get it out. So you can see, that's one thing that's kind of nice about the angle pliers. Sometimes you can get in there and kind of pry on them. So I just kind of got in here and pry it up to get it out. So that I can still reuse. And then go into here and get this 8mm bolt out. There we go. Got that one out. I'll pull this off. I'm going to stick it back in here. So this is the tin that goes underneath that stator. Well, just underneath. Kind of lay this down on here. Okay, so now that we have this off, you can see a little bit better the stator. So the wires go down into this groove and connects within the electrical system here. On here, I'm not sure where it ties in. I don't know if there's a joint in there. I would assume so, but I don't know 100%. But usually you can replace these stators. Otherwise, you just have to pin them out, just pull them out. And this, since it's AC, it doesn't matter which direction it's alternating. So that's the reason of AC, alternating current. Okay, so these are my stator windings, bolts. So I'm just going to stud them up there. And out comes that. Yeah, as you can see, this thing has seen a lot of work. Now, I am not going to pressure wash my harness. I don't recommend that. I don't want water in the contacts and stuff. So I am going to blow a lot of this after I take it off. But the biggest thing is I want to get this block out of my way first. So we'll continue. So here's that breather tube. Now we can see it a little bit better. I'm just slipping our hose clamp up, and then you can get in here and kind of help lift her out. Now I'm going to put a bolt in that so that I reduce any chances of debris going down that. Because you really don't want crap getting into certain areas if you can help it. Okay, so kind of want this off, but I really don't want to have to take that out. So now we're basically left with the shields here and our intake assembly. So basically, I should, because we have our throttle arm disconnected. We have all of this disconnected. I can lift that up like a wing, lift this up, yep. So, and there's nothing connected in the front. The sensors are disconnected. So yeah, so we should be able to take these two bolts out on each side and pull this whole thing off. So let's go ahead and do that. Yeah, I did hear a washer drop. So that one had a washer and a lock nut because it has a little ground strap right here. And then I got to disconnect this to gain access in here. Okay, so now this should be the last one. So what I'm doing is I'm just making sure I support this whole thing and kind of lifting up a little bit because I don't want to mar it, as in the head I don't care about so much, but the intake tube intake assembly, I want to make sure that is not getting boogered up. And gently set this off to the side. Now, as you can see, it's not exactly the cleanest job. There's all kinds of gunk that you ended up dealing with. So we're going to take our sensors out. This one is 16 mil. That looks like a temperature sensor. I'm going to set that. I'm just going to set it on here. And then I believe this is an oil pressure switch, or pressure sensor, essentially. There we go. And then I'm just going to set it on there for right now. Perfect. Okay, last but not least, my oil drain tube. And a lot of even new engines, you might find that you just have a plug on it. So if your old engine had an oil drain tube or something, you're going to have to transfer that more often than not. Okay, we're just going to set this aside. Okay, so with this engine, I believe we have everything off except our spark plugs, but I think I'm going to put some new plugs in this. So let me get this removed. And as you can see, everything is messy. So I always tried to clean up along the way. Now that we have everything removed in order to put onto our long block here, we want to clean everything. So I already started on some things, and I personally like mineral spirits. You can take these, you know, don't get it all in here. I was holding it like this, cleaned on the outside, blew, and then just set it here in place. I'm not going to install it just yet. And then same thing with our pressure switch, clean with mineral spirits on the outside. I didn't get down in there, and then blew, and then just set it on here. I want to clean everything. So it's a pretty big chore, and personally it's very satisfying in the end. So we got to clean all of this. Now when I clean my electrical components and stuff, I'm doing it all pretty much by air. Probably some of the stuff I'll hit some mineral spirits on the outside a little bit and blow off. I'm just making sure I'm not blowing any garbage into any of these connections and stuff. So let's go ahead. Oh, and then the same thing like with our oil drain tube. There was like a Teflon tape, pipe plumber's tape basically on there. So I took the wire wheel, went along there, got that off, and then used mineral spirits, wiped everything off and stuff. And then I put this on here to make sure I'm not getting any garbage down in there. So just going to go through, clean up everything, and before we reinstall. So I'm arranging everything kind of up by the shop door. I want to work on the inside. I would put a blanket down, but I don't want my blanket full of grit and nastiness. So I'm gonna blow all this stuff and kind of get it outside. Now note, I have these intakes here, and I put some paper towels down in there to make sure that they stay clean and no debris gets in there. So we're gonna clean all of this and then start cleaning up the little components. Anything you can, just kind of seal off, just to help reduce getting grit in areas that you don't want to get grit. So just a note. got everything cleaned, and some things painted. The wife decided to like paint some stuff. So we went ahead and painted that. We ended up using the high heat Rust-Oleum stuff on this, a matte black. So now that everything is cleaned as best as possible, let's go ahead and start putting it together. So to do that, I really want to get the oil filter installed and the drain tube. And I noticed that you can't hook that up like that. So that tells me I got to transfer something off my old engine. So let's go over there real quick and see what it is. There we go. Let me go discard this oil filter. So it looks like it's a hex screw. And I like this oil filter removal tool. It doesn't, you can't install it with this, but what I like about it is it clamps down on it nicely, and so you don't mess up your oil filter wrench. So like these band ones, you can, if they're really on there, it starts bending things, and I've had it bend this thing straight so many times, and you can see it's clearly still slightly bent. So let's get this removed. This is 5/16 apparently. Now let's transfer this over to our new engine. Make sure this is clean all the way around. Then tighten it. There we go. Now let's install our oil filter. To install our oil filter, definitely make sure you lube up this O-ring. Because if you don't do that, I've actually seen one roll. The very first time I've ever seen one roll out of all these years. And it wasn't from my shop, it was actually from another shop, unfortunately. And I got it, and the customer was complaining that it was leaking. Well, there was no oil in it, so I needed to find where it was leaking. And in order to do that, put oil in it and start it up, and it was just pouring out like a geyser. Now, personally, I snug them up with the wrench. You could, you know, He-Man it essentially. By doing it by hand. I personally like to use the wrench. I can't tell you how many times I see these things loose and there's a whole bunch of oil leaking under here, and I just personally don't take that kind of risk, especially in my shop. So that's why I personally snug them up with the wrench, and that's why I use that tool, so I can bite into it to pull it off. So now we're going to go ahead and install our oil drain tube, but we got to get this plug removed, and I'm going to put a little block right here, help kind of hold that there. There we go. Now usually there's a plug on the other side, so I am going to check that, because it looks like this is just strictly a plug. They didn't put a lot of Teflon tape on it. So I just want to make sure the other side is good. So when you put these on, make sure you apply some Teflon tape. Now, when you do it, you want to make sure that if you were to screw this down, so righty-tighty, so as you rotate it this way, you want to make sure that the tape doesn't end in this direction. So it doesn't want to unroll as you tighten it down. So I got to make sure it's like this. I've seen so many things in terms of like, oh, this is how you got to do it, and whatever. This is how I do it. I just get it on there quite a few times, and I make sure it's going in the proper direction, and then I tighten it down. I've never had an issue doing so. So if you have some other way that you think is best, by all means, feel free. This is just how I do it. There we go, that's plenty. Now I want to rotate this, and what I'm going to do is I want it in the direction that I can put all of this stuff back on that I have taken off. We're kind of do things now in the reverse order. So let's, oh, before I do that, I'm sorry, the front end of this engine right up here, we have these two sensors. We need to do the same thing. Actually, this one I don't need to. It has a little O-ring on here, as you can see. I'm just going to apply a little bit of oil on there. Make sure that is lubed, and then we'll get that installed. Get that nice and snug. And then we'll get this one installed, same gig, with a little bit of Teflon though, making sure to go in the right direction. There we go. And then we'll snug that. Right there, that should be good. Now that we got these on, by the way, I did put all my bolts in place where they're supposed to be temporarily, just so I know exactly where everything is and where it should be. So now let's turn this thing around. We need to get this intake assembly on here, and I need to put some new gaskets on here. So from my head gasket kit that I got originally, it actually came with 2 of these packs. And so let's open this one. And this one had, looks like a head gasket and 2 intakes. Let's pull these off, and let me grab a little bit of cleaner. I want to make sure these are nice and clean / degreased. If there's anything on there, I want to make sure that is removed. Now let's install our gasket. Sometimes these are a little bit of a trick, but if you grab a pick, you can usually lift up the edge. Like that. Okay, make sure it goes in the proper direction. Just like so. Perfect. I'm gonna lift that whole assembly up, and before I install, I did apply or put some of these paper towels down the intake. So I made sure no debris got down in there when I was cleaning. Basically about right here. So I'm gonna set this down a little bit because I have this bolt. Even though I applied some anti-seize on it, I am gonna apply a little bit, some fresh anti-seize on it. I applied it when I originally installed it from doing the head. Now I did coat it up the whole shaft because of in here you'll have dirt that kind of starts to build up. So I did coat it all the way up through there. So I'm going to set that in there. Set this one. So this one I have to disconnect right here so I can set the bolt in. This one with the washer goes where the little ground is, and then I personally put lock washers on all of these because I had issues back in the day of them coming loose. They actually did a service bulletin on it, on that issue. So being careful, holding things up, not torquing anything. I'm just getting it where it's just getting flush. So I just got it flush. So now we need to torque it properly. Now, in my other video, you would have seen what I did is I went to the service manual, took a picture of it, and then torqued it accordingly. Makes it a little easier to do if you can have it right next to you. So as you can see, so it's shaped exactly like this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they want you to torque it at, on here, this is the service bulletin for this particular engine, number 322, and it says you got to torque it in 2 stages. First to 69 inch-pounds and then to 93. So we're going to torque it to 69 first. I think on this I can't go that low. I think 71 is the lowest, but yeah, 71. So on this, 71 inch-pounds is the lowest we're going to go. So let's torque it, and then it says the inner. So 1 here, 2, 3, 4. So let's start with this. And now we need it at 93 inch-pounds. And then do the same thing. So change this to 93. There we go. So now we got that properly torqued for intake. So now we got to hook everything kind of back up. I'm going to apply a little bit of dielectric grease. Some people are like, oh, you don't want to do that with your electrical connectors. You know what? I call it BS, because here's the thing. I wired up my security cameras down on my gate. All my IP cameras are IP cameras, and they're power over Ethernet. Now, the problem I had was the connectors were the RJ45 connectors. They would eventually get water seeping in there. No matter what I did, eventually over time, I'd get water in there and then I'd have a camera go down. Well, I found that if I just squirted a whole bunch of dielectric grease in there, filled that RJ45 connection, I was able to not have that issue ever again. And they work just fine. I mean, as you can see, all my cameras are working. So, but yeah, that's basically dielectric grease. It's a good thing. So use it and use it wisely. So now that we have this reinstalled and this torqued and everything, we need to now get our stator back in position. So I got to pull these 2 screws for the stator off, and then these 3 for the cover, and the stator goes on just like so. Like that. Now, I'm putting anti-seize on everything. Like, you can do as you wish, but for me, anti-seize has been a lifesaver. Just a little dab of this. Like, I'm kind of going a little overboard, to be honest, but a little dab of it. Take this bolt out. A little dab of it goes a long ways, and it can save you a large amount of money. Basically, if I had it on my engine before, they just applied that on everything, I wouldn't be in the position I am right now. But in the end, the engine needed to get replaced. It is a well-used engine. I got my money's worth out of that thing. And yeah, with these, just get them tight and just snug. Don't need to go crazy on these. So we have our covers that we need to kind of get, or not covers, they're more of air diverters. We have this one here. So let's get this part reinstalled, put a little bit of anti-seize on it. Now I have already, all the ones that have bolts in it, I have already ran, these are self-tapping bolts, and none of these had threads. As you can see, none of this have threads. So snug, and then just a little turn. Now I put this over this because I didn't want my connectors for my ECU getting a lot of junk blown into it. So this went on like so, and I have a couple screws on here. I try to put screws back in certain places so that you can always keep track of where everything is, because eventually you get to a point where you have all kinds of different sizes and lengths and diameters. So just make your life easier by screwing things back in. So this goes in right like that. So we're going to get these 4 bolts in, but before I do, more anti-seize. And then when you get this on, you want to make sure that wire's in that groove where it should be, which I made sure of. So I'm just going to get it close, and then I'll get it snug. And once I get snug, like so, give it a little turn. You don't need to go crazy. Okay, so since I'm already up here, I want to get our flywheel back on. Now I did not clean no, I did clean this. So the thread's clean on that. I have a little woodruff key, which is this little guy here. We need to put that back in. There we go. Make sure that's in all the way. Now I personally put a little bit of anti-seize on the output shaft here. Now I can already hear some of you guys gonna say, don't put anti-seize on that, that's a tapered shaft, blah, blah, blah. Like, do as you wish. This is what I've always done. I've never had an issue with anti-seize on a tapered shaft like that. Never had an issue. I do it because I don't like things seizing up on me. I've had too many things seize up because of lack of anti-seize or whatnot. And then in here, I cleaned everything up, got all the dirt out of there. We're ready to install this. So making sure that the keyways, right? There we go. I kind of pinched my fingers when I dropped it down, but we got it on. Then I'm going to apply just a little bit of anti-seize on the end of the threads. And then we will give it a little bit of an ugga-dugga. Now you don't have to go super crazy, but definitely get it on there. So I set on my lowest setting, and this is all I do. That's it. You're good. Never had an issue doing it that way. So I have my Hall effect sensor for my timing that I need to install. So we're gonna take these screws out. None of these screws that I preset in here, they're all been clean. I've run them down dry to start the threads, and I'm gonna put them, reinstall them all with the anti-seize. Now before I do that, I need to look up what the gap is for this. I've never had to gap this particularly, so I need to look that up. So apply a little bit of dielectric grease there. For the crankshaft position sensor, it's between 8 thousandths to 27 thousandths. Now, a business card thickness, let me make sure this is on and zeroed. So this business card is at basically 16 thousandths. So this will be perfect. It's within spec. So go ahead and dab a little bit of anti-seize on our thread. Then I want to pop this in place. And a little anti-seize. There we go. And this little nub right here, stick the business card in between, press it against there, like so. And then we can go ahead and snug this up, but I need the right socket. So we're gonna get it first, pretty close, where it's just almost kissing, so I can still move it. Okay. So we can still move it. Make sure it's straight up and down. So in here you can see this little groove, making sure it's sitting on top of that. I'm gonna snug it. And then I'm gonna go over here, do the same thing. And once it's snug, give it a little turn. Like so. And still fit the business card in there just like we should. Now when you're moving this, since we don't have these trays or these tins installed, we got to be careful. We're going to install this one while we're on this side, but before we do that, I need to make sure. So here is where this goes, and it looks like this bolt here, I got a pole that came with the engine, and I have not started the threads on these. And again, like I said, you can see these are like triangle-ish, and they're self-tapper. So basically, I stick it on like so, and start. Make sure it's centered, as in nice and straight. I'm just holding down on the top, just slowly running it down. Now, if you feel quite a bit of resistance, stop, because you could be bottoming out or something's not right. Just back it out, check. If you have to, feel for depth, because you don't know how far to run. Like for example, I don't know how deep this one is. And if I stick something in there, pull it out, I could basically bottom this out and have a little bit of threads there. And if you look at this, this is the thickness. So keep that in mind. If you're like essentially pre-tapping this like this. And it's been feeling fine this whole time. Yeah, now it's starting to get hard, and see, we're about right there. We're probably an 1/8 inch from bottom, which is, we don't even need to go any further. I've already gone as far as I already need to go. And now if you see, you got threads. Now you couldn't do that with just any bolt. It actually has to be a self-tapper style bolt. Now I'm going to do the same thing for this one up here. And this time I'm going to use this one with an extension, because that one's underneath that tin. Just making sure it's straight up and down. And they'll kind of self-guide themselves for the most part. So you don't have to, I mean, you just got to take care. Technically, you could just run this down with that on there. But for me, personally, I like to run it through by hand first before I put anything on, just like I'm doing now, just to make absolutely sure everything's still good and everything's good. So we got that threaded. And we're going to pull this bolt out. That's just a little stubby bolt. So that's interesting. Okay, yeah, I'm not sure why they put that on there, but that's not needed. I want to make sure I'm going to use the one that I pulled off over there because it's longer. And I'm going to slowly run this down over here, just to confirm. Yeah, everything feels good. So I'm going to pull this one out. Yeah, I'm not sure why they put that in, just to show you. This is what was pulled off the other engine, and this is what was pulled off here. So I'm not sure why that was there, but that's okay. So now we can get this in position. Also making sure that you still have those little retainers, these guys here, not just plastic. And the little anti-seize, we install it. And what's nice also with anti-seize is, like for example, these have little inserts. Now if these little metal inserts with this metal bolt were to ever seize up, you go to try to take this bolt off, you probably more than likely will strip out those inserts out of that plastic. So I see it a lot on like the Honda 21s with the plastic mower decks. Now I got it snug, I just do a little turn just to lock it in place. All right, so now let's take these bolts out. And let's get our little tin screws that go for this up right over there. It's kind of hard to see, but it's basically where this tin, where that hole is, into that threaded piece right here. Yeah, so this tube, this breather tube here, is actually in the way compared to the other one. So I need to grab a little wrench, and unfortunately I gotta use a little wrench on that. Before I get that tightened up all the way, I need to make sure that I have this tube going down over there, which is the breather, and this needs to at least be in place. So let's get this bolt out, put a little bit of anti-seize on it. And install. I'm not going to actually tighten that all the way because I want to make sure I have another bolt up here that I need to start to make sure this tin stays in its proper place. Okay, so now that I got the bolts in place, I can go ahead and snug this one up completely. The reason why I do that is if you don't have them all in place, it could be out of alignment, and then you're tweaking on it and nothing, it's just lining up properly. Okay, so it's snug. Just a little turn like so, and we're good. Now we're back to this stinking bolt here. And over all these wires, I'm trying to be very careful not to be messing with these wires a lot because they are older, and you could fatigue them, and then I'll have an electrical issue. And with EFI, that can be a nightmare. It's ridiculous. There we go. Now we're just getting snug. Trying to get the right angle. There we go. Now we're good. Cool. So that is on there. Now this guy, this is our fuel pump. This is our breather that needs to connect into there. Now this should go in something like that. But before I hook that up, I want to plug that back in, that coil. I'll put a little bit of dielectric grease on the contact end, and then reinstall it. So I'm going to try to plug this in. There we go. Now we got it in there. So now I need to get our hose clamp down. So let's pull some of this. So right here, you can see it went underneath that. So now I have to get it out from under there and then slide it down. Perfect. We got her back in place. We'll move that down. And that wire, as you can see, is still pretty dirty. There we go. Okay, so coil's in, fuel pump hose is in place. Now we need to get our high pressure fuel pump in place. And that goes in just like so. Get a little bit of anti-seize on our bolts before we reinstall. Just gonna run it down enough where it's kind of holding it so it's not shifting on me. Making sure this wire is still accessible for our voltage regulator. Okay, and now that I got that in by hand, we're going to go ahead and snug them. And then once snug, little turn, little turn, little turn. So I rotated the engine over here on this side, taking care of the tin and stuff, because you don't want, you know, smashing into things. You have all these wires and everything too. You just gotta take care. We have a 10 mil bolt down here. I need to make sure I disconnect, or remove, I should say. And 8 over here on this part of the tin. That has been removed, and then there was a 10 over here. So let's go ahead and put a little bit of dielectric grease, or not dielectric grease, I'm sorry, anti-seize. Now that I got that one started, get a little anti-seize, place it on this one, and then on our little piece right here, I'm gonna see if I can just connect this coil real quick first. That way I'm not pushing up against that wire. So now that I have it in its position, everything looks good. We'll get this all snugged up. So got that snug. Switch over the 10 and get this one. Okay, so now that I got that snug, this one I'm not going to snug up because this one's going to come off. There's a few other things that still need to go on there, but I'll get that snugged up like so. Go up to the top one. Just like that. This one has plenty of dielectric grease, so I'm going to reinstall it. There we go. So we got ourselves some new spark plugs. I'm just checking the gap, even though they're brand new out of the box, just making sure the gap is good. And this one's a little bit tight, so let me adjust it. And this should be about 30 thousandths. We got to pull these little plugs out that are in here. So that's where these little pliers can come in handy. And I'll add a little bit of anti-seize to the threads, and we'll install our plug. There's that one. Now we can plug this guy in. There we go. Now we'll rotate it. We'll do the same thing on the other side. Same gig. Pull the little cap off. Apply a little bit of anti-seize and install the plug. Now when you put these on, you should feel a little click. If you don't feel it, it could be your little piece is twisted in the, or in this case, looks like some gunk. Or sometimes they can get a little boogered up. There we go. So now that we got all that on, we need to go back to the front of this. We're going to put a little bit of dielectric grease on these two connections. Yep, that's on there. Now we need to look into getting our governor arm reinstalled, which is this guy. Let's get this connected back on. There is this little plastic piece right here, the retainer. So this, if you slip it down in there, it should rotate and clip against the bar. So we're going to slip it underneath. Remember, it went here on the furthest outside. Then this goes down like that, and then you clip it. And then this anti-lash spring comes down using some pliers. Comes down and connects right there. Okay. Now that we have that in place, we need to adjust. So to set the governor on the EFI system, basically you need to move the governor lever towards the throttle body as far as it'll go. So towards the throttle body, so moving it up as far as it'll go. And so basically wide open throttle. And one way you can confirm that is if you look over here, you have your idle screw. And if I pull this down, that's the idle, that's full throttle. So idle. Right here, I'm hitting right here, this idle screw, and that's full throttle, hitting the full throttle stop. So idle. So we want to move it as far as it'll go, so wide open throttle. And then I need to take a nail or something, and here's our governor arm. See how I can still move this? Now, I need to move this in the shaft counterclockwise as far as it'll go. So full throttle, holding this full throttle, turning this counterclockwise. So everything is going this way. And now I need to grab my socket and snug this. There we go. That should be a set governor. You want to do that now before you get the exhaust on, because if you don't do that, it could be high revving and it's just going to be a nightmare. So you're going to end up having to pull things off. So do that now before you put everything back together. These pieces here, they go like that, and this one goes basically like that. So I'm going to lay those out here, and then we have these tins. They go in here. So I got to pull that bolt there off the breather. I got to pull these two bolts here. These are different lengths, because we also have the exhaust bolted down on here. So the front one's longer, the back one's shorter. So I'm going to lay it out to remind myself. And then same thing on this side. So as you can see, the back one's shorter, the front one is longer. And if you look at it compared to the other two, this one here is the same, and this one here is a little bit shorter. So that's what I mean, there can be a little bit different. So now that I got those out, this tin goes in here like so. So I need to pull that bolt, I need to pull that bolt. Would have been easier to do if I did that, the tins before the breather, or the governor. That's okay. So now that I got that out, I'll get that tin in place. I'm gonna apply a little bit of anti-seize on it and reinstall. Okay, now this one back here, get that out, get our tin in place, just like that. get a little bit of anti-seize on it, and reinstall. There we go, and do the same thing on this one. Yeah, everything's in place, just like that. There we go, perfect. Okay, so we have our throttle bracket. I learned last time that I should probably put this in first, and I can't remember if it went underneath or on the outside. So this is why it's always nice to just take pictures, because it will save you a lot of heartache. And I'll show you here in a second. So this is why it's nice, just take pictures of everything before you start. So this was what I did on the first video, is I took pictures of everything, and you can see it actually goes on the outside. So if I have this swiveled around, it should be basically like this. So this goes up, and I know it goes right there, and basically like that, but that doesn't seem right. Oh yeah, there it is. I just wasn't holding in the right spot. So just like that. Now, one thing I want to check. Yeah, so then if you look, I wanted to make sure I knew this tin right here, which is this guy. I knew it was somewhere in here. I wasn't sure if it's up above or below, and you can see is down below. So, and unfortunately, parts diagrams will not help you on that. So this is why it's really important to make sure you take pictures. Now, that unfortunately is something I broke, but I did get replacements, and that's these guys. So the short one goes on the inside down low, which is this one. But, like I almost forgot, this tin goes in there. And then this longer one goes up above. Now, if I remember correctly, the exhaust connected to one of these. So I can't remember. Let me grab it right here. So if I grab this guy and set it up in place, so it'll be, yeah, so that's why this one is longer and this one is longer. So the reason why I did that is I wasn't going to snug this one up completely, but I will get this one snugged up. And then we'll put this tin on here and do the same thing. And this one all get snugged up all the way. Like that. Okay, let's get our, we don't want to forget to get our anti-lash spring. And not that it really matters which direction, but you just want to make sure, actually it does matter which direction, because this needs to slide on here. So if you look at here, you can see it's very important that that is correctly installed. So this goes through like that. And then we are on setting 3. So it goes just like this. So this way, this can slide. So that's why it's very important, just take pictures. Otherwise, you gotta find a video like mine, or a picture, or look at another one to reference, hopefully, if they have it done right. So here is the original exhaust. Now this is not original to that engine. This has been replaced like 2 times now. This is a fairly recent one. Let's clean up the face of these real quick. Now this, I don't care if there's a little bit of debris in it, it's just gonna blow it out. I just wanna make sure there's nothing on the surface that is gonna cause any leaks with debris. This came off my head gasket, and this kit was 2484104-S. So with that, it came with new exhaust gaskets that I'm going to use. So pull these plugs, install these head gasket, or not head gaskets, I'm sorry, exhaust gaskets. And then I'm going to pull these studs out, or bolts, I should say. And these are actually important because if you didn't have these, you get a lot of fatigue and it will actually break the weld. It'll do it in weird places. So these are important to have installed properly. Now that we got the exhaust gaskets installed, we're going to go ahead and install our muffler. We got the 2 bolts removed from there too. We'll run this up. We already made sure the surface of everything is nice and clean. And I noticed one issue I have on this, it came with this engine bracket here. I need to take this off. Mine did not have that. So we're gonna go ahead and take that off and remove it because I'm hitting on the muffler. And then I'm gonna put a little bit of anti-seize on this bolt and reinstall it. There we go. Let's try again. Getting everything lined up and in place. That all looks good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get our bolts in here just to hold it. Get it snug. And then we'll get this one installed too. I forgot to put anti-seize on this, so I'm going to take this one out and fix that because this area gets really hot, and unfortunately on the other one I had it break. So plenty of anti-seize this time. So get it snug and then give it a little turn like so. Now, I like to put lock washers on here. And then I'm going to apply a little bit of anti-seize on the ends of the threads. Because sometimes what can happen is they'll rust up on there pretty good with some heat cycles and stuff, and it just helps be able to take those off. And what's nice is with the lock washers on there, they are springy and they'll help kind of hold it in these, make sure that these stay in place, the flange bolts. And so you don't have to like crank them down really tight. I mean, you can get them nice and snug, but I haven't had any issues. This is just how I prefer it. So I just get them snug because once that lock washer is flat, it's holding it. But you want to make sure it's snug enough that you're not going to get exhaust leaking. There we go. Cool. So I'm just double checking everything, making sure everything is plugged in, and everything is plugged in. I try to minimize as much as possible that it took apart. One thing I did notice is the O2 sensor right up here. This is our O2 sensor, and it likes to be right there, and then this clips on right here. So it's the same thing. I got to pull this off. So this doesn't belong on here. Set it aside, put some anti-seize on this, and then get this installed just like so. Now before I snug it, this kind of looped up and kind of held everything just like that. So I just wanted to make sure that was connected. There, we got this snug, and then we're going to put some dielectric grease on here. And then clip that on. And then I need to snug this up. But before I do that, since I already have this in the easiest position, I'm going to take it off and I'm going to put some anti-seize on it. Since I'm already right here. I know I'm going crazy on this anti-seize, but I'm telling you, it definitely is a lifesaver. Now that we got that stuff sorted out and everything, let's go ahead and install our starter and then get our ECU and stuff on, and then we'll get the engine cover on. So pull these bolts out. We'll put some anti-seize on the ends of these. And then this is our mount for our ECU. And this runs through. And these look like, I think are, yeah, they're 10 mil. Get that down here. I have to make sure that I have this properly routed. There we go. So I don't want to pinch any of that. Okay. This is why I like the long extensions, because then you can try to get it started, and it's a little easier. The reason why I decided to do the starter first and get this closed up, I can see everything. It's a little easier to line up. Perfect. Now let's get our ECU installed. So it is important that this is flush on here and stuff. I believe they may be grounding this out. If it's not just a heat sink, they might be using this as also a ground. So I don't know 100%, but just keep that in mind. That's why this was not painted or anything. And this connection right here, that's if you hook it up to the computer. So all of this sneaked up and hooked up like this. So I'm just trying to see what is going on. I think this is actually supposed to be down kind of like that. No, actually, this moves over this way. Yep, like that. Yeah, you shouldn't have to force anything. And so it's just kind of shifting things around, seeing if that is the best position or not. And this is how it goes. It's in the most relaxed position. There we go. Now I'm going to apply some dielectric grease through here. And plug this in. You know, you usually hear like a click, like I just did. There we go. Now that's properly secure. Let's go ahead and hook up the starter. So that will go up like that. I'm not going to tighten this yet because we need to get our positive lead here. And then this is our starter signal for the solenoid. And this seems a little loose. I've had issues with this. Technically, I need to kind of put a new crimp on this. There we go. That's pretty snug. Cool. So this is all attached. That's just sitting there loose for now. Let's get our breather installed. So this, the best way to install this, let me get this rubber off. I just put this here just to make sure I'm not getting any gunk down in there. So we'll get that installed like that. That one's actually not flanged, which just makes it easy. So there's really nothing special on that. Now plug it in. So we got our breather on. And let's get our, before we can get our cover on, we need to put our fan installed. And on here, this looks like it's used for one that has a magnet on the flywheel. So this looks like it's been repurposed. That's what that little cutout there, there's usually a magnet on a different style of flywheel if it's non-EFI. And then we need to make sure these little nubs go into these little holes. So just like that. But if you notice that it's actually that hole and that hole because these are threaded. So that nub and right there. And how you know you got it right is if you can see on the flywheel the holes, because I could shift it over and I can get it in the wrong spot like I did earlier. Yeah, right there. It's flush. And then if I rotate it, there we go. Now you can see the holes. No, you stay. You stay. You be a good boy. We're almost done. So now that we got this fan lined up, let's go ahead and get this reinstalled. And actually, no, that does not go on yet. That goes on after we get the cover on. So let me just double check everything. Everything looks good. Now we'll get this back in place. And this breather tube, I kind of have to muck around. Now I have this bolt here that needs to come out, and I have the same thing on the other side that I was talking about where I slipped it down in that shield. So let's get those removed. And now let's get this back in place. This is on the outside. That goes under. And I have this bar for our throttle. I gotta make sure that comes, it's not going underneath. There we go. Because this shield goes on the top of this, and then that one goes underneath. Yeah, it's just kind of a little bit of a job, making sure that everything is in its proper spot. Now we're going to get the bolts installed. Before we do that, I need to get my voltage regulator installed on here, and I'm going to, these are plastic screws. Big difference, you have coarse thread and then you have fine thread, and you can see a little bit of plastic that I actually kept, but coarse thread, fine thread, or even coarse for plastic. I mean they do have coarse thread bolts, but oh, I almost forgot. I got to have my ground strap, and that connects here down to here. Now without this body grounded, you can have a voltage regulator issues. So it is important that that is on there snug. You don't want to go crazy tightening it, because it is plastic, so you can run into issues. So we'll grab our smaller bolts and we'll thread this in place into this tin. So this one I can go snug. And then that's about it. You don't want to go any more. And then this just snug, because otherwise you just start stripping out. Now that's installed. Let's get some dielectric grease on here and get that installed. Now we have another bolt for this cover on this side, and I think that is attached with the dipstick. So before I install this dipstick, which I need to install, one, I need to pull this cap, and then two, I need to replace this O-ring, because I don't know if it's any good. So we'll pull that O-ring off. Let me grab a new O-ring. Got our new O-ring on there. For our new O-ring, apply a little bit of oil, just so I can pop it in nicely. And got to get this plug removed. We got our new O-ring on there. I need to put this in first, but before I do that, I don't want to drop it into my crankcase. So let's get this bolt in for the cover. And there we go. Get it snug. That's all you really need. Now on this, I have a broken bolt on here, so let me get a new one. So we got a new bolt. Making sure this is clean and clear. One with our dipstick. That will slide down like so. And get that. There is, oh, I forgot. So behind the ECU, there's actually another bolt that I'm supposed to have. So let me pop this off real quick. Making sure I keep the washer and lock washer intact. Let that sit down. You can see down in there that this one goes right down right there. And now we can put the ECU back on. Okay, now that that's on, that bolt's over on that place. We have one more, and it goes on this side, right here. And we can get our fuel pump reinstalled. But before we reinstall our fuel pump, we need to put the two bolts up front for the tin. Or not the tin, but for right here at the valve cover. So let me rotate this a little bit. Some anti-seize. There we go. Now we can get our fuel pump installed up here. Anti-seize, anti-seize, anti-seize. Everything's anti-seize. And I believe this was actually like so. I believe it's this one. So because this slipped off. So let me slide this back on. Goes right there. Get that snug. I think that might have to move, but I'm not sure. I'll have to look that up a little bit later, but I believe that goes there. And then I have two more that I'm going to have to look through and see where those went. But for now, it's not a big deal. I can make sure I route that properly. So let's go on the other side where the breather is and let's finish that. We'll get these bolts reinstalled. And that's the thing, is sometimes you'll see that this tin, like this tin is wanting to sit down. There we go. So it's flush. There we go. That one's on. Now we get our breather back in place. So plug that in. Get that in, and then we have the mount, which consists of this bar or backing plate and this band. So this band, this backing plate, which actually I'm gonna have to pull this back out. There we go. And get. Usually what I find is sticking the screws in like this first and run it through is usually the easiest. So I got that started, and over here. And I got that one started. So now I can snug them up, making sure this is held down, pointing in the right direction. There we go. Perfect. So now our breather's on. Let's go ahead and get our fan installed. We're on to our home stretch here. We'll get these covers real quick. This is the inspection plate to check everything. Make sure the fins are clear and stuff. So this plate went on like that. Sometimes what you can do is you can set them in place, and then if you're having a hard time with your hand, use the tool to kind of get it in a proper position. You don't have to go cranking on these anything crazy. Getting anti-seize everywhere. Should have painted this silver. Like that one's kind of, you can use it, just kind of get it roughly in place, and then you can kind of use your tool to help. So now we got the inspection plates installed. Let's get our fan installed. Now on this, unfortunately, these are seized in there. So I can't do anything about it. On these, unless I want to cut them off, I can reorder them. Now these, I'm going to run anti-seize all up and down this. This is what I mean, anti-seize to your friend. I put it on, so make sure you run anti-seize down through these. So this, I'm just going to coat with anti-seize. If you do that, more than likely you will not have that issue. So these seat down in like so. So the opposite side, I'm going to put anti-seize on these threads here. So what I got to do is I kind of got to get each side kind of going so I can slowly walk this down in place. And before I get too carried away, I need to make sure that tube is still lined up. There we go. We'll get these started. Yep. This one. It's probably not getting close because I got to get these down further. Now I should be able to. Yeah, this one's now starting to go. But I don't want to get those down all the way yet until I get these down. So I got to walk it, unfortunately. There we go. Felt that. Felt that one. Now I can snug these up. There we go. Perfect. Okay, now let's get our fan cover on. Take these bolts out. their Torx. Okay. Put our fan cover on, or guard, fan guard. We have a spacer, another spacer, and one up here. Apply a little bit of anti-seize. And get them all snug. Now when I go to snug these, I make sure that these are centered like that. I'm not sure why they have it like they do. Okay, I also remembered, as I was working on this, remember where these hose clamps went. And they actually go, we have one here, because this goes up to the gas tank. So there's one that goes right here. So this one goes like this. But before I get that snugged up, the other one right here on this valve cover, so I gotta take this bolt off, get a little bit of anti-seize on it, and this one gets reinstalled. So basically it comes down through here, and then up and over to my tank. So just want it kind of properly angled as necessary. So it looks like this actually went up and underneath. So let me just kind of tuck it. It doesn't have to be exactly, but I like getting things at least close to, or if not better than what it was. Yeah, I like that. Perfect. Okay, last but not least is our throttle assembly. So we have this plate here, and I need to take out the 3 Phillips screws, these plastic screws here, one there and one here, and then this goes down, pulling that up, goes in like that. Now we'll get our screws reinstalled. Again, they're just plastic, so just get them snug. So got some anti-seize on there. So I'm just making sure that this throttle is twisted, making sure it's pushed that way. Okay, so we need to go ahead and reinstall the spring, the washer, and the throttle arm, and the nut. And then we'll go ahead and snug this up. We have now put this whole engine back together, and now go ahead and install it onto our mower. So let's go ahead and proceed with that. Day 3, technically. So we need to clean this thing now that the engine's removed. We have oil in here that needs to get removed. I need to replace belts. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get everything clean, including this clutch and stuff, and we're gonna also pull these tins off so I can clean on top of there. We'll check the spindles and pulleys and stuff when I go to put the belts on with the engine and everything. But overall, we basically want to degrease all of this because this is a mess. So there's a few things you want to do before you just go pressure washing some of this. Like for one, I have my fuel line, it's turned off. I put a bolt here. I don't want excess water to go in here. And then even after that, I'm gonna drain a little bit of gas, just make sure I have gas coming out and that pushes out any little bit of water residue because we don't want that in our pump. I have a vent here. This should be venting out, a one-way valve. I'm just gonna put something over that just to make sure that's sealed. I have this electrical connection. I really don't want water inside the connection here, so I'm just gonna put a bag over this, and then outside of that, everything else I should be able to hit with the pressure washer just fine. On these hydro gear transmission, so these are our pumps, and then I have wheel motors on each side. So I have one pump, motor. And on these, to put these in a bypass, if you're curious, there's this valve here. When you loosen it up, all it takes is one full turn like that. When you loosen it up, it puts in a bypass. Same thing on this side. There's one here, so one. Sometimes some people will put a bolt through there just long enough so they can turn it by hand. I don't do that. There's not often where I have to put this in a bypass. So anyway, let's go ahead and wheel this out and start cleaning it. So we'll pull this tin off. And then let me grab a wrench real quick. I think this is 1/2 inch on each side. So on these, since they see a lot of weather, it's just easier. Apply a little bit of penetrating lube on the threads as you back these off. Pull that tin. Oh, on here, I forgot, there's two right here, one right here, but there's a slit in it, so I don't have to take it off all the way. I just gotta back these off so it doesn't pinch the tin. So, see, it's just channeled. Okay, do the same thing on the other side. Apparently that side it sheared off at some point. There we go. Pull that off. So now all I'm going to do is just take a little bit of soap and Dawn, just spritz it on some of this. You can use some other degreaser that you want. This is all I really need. There's not a lot. I almost forgot these pulleys and this clutch. And that's the thing, is sometimes when you think you got it all, you didn't get it all. But I got a lot of it. So before I get it in here, I'm just going to kind of blow it off real quick. Now that we got everything cleaned, it's a little bit easier to work with. We need to replace these belts. These belts are definitely well used. This is my engine to deck belt, and it could use a little, I could get away with it for a little bit longer, but the sheathing is starting to come off. So we're already in here, we're gonna replace that. So that's the engine to deck belt. We'll just set that aside for now. But we need to get to this one first before we can get to that one, or do that one. So to do that, we need to pull this spring, because that's going to help us a lot to get this tension off of here. Now the best trick I've found personally is get yourself some like pull cord, or even some pack strap, or even an old ratchet strap, if you have some extra laying around, or even pull your ratchet strap and put it on there. What's nice about that is it is flat, and so you can grab it better, and it's not digging in your hand. But even if you use some pull cord, you can just wrap it around like a tool, use it like a lever. Now I've got to get in the right position. Unfortunately, I can't go from there, because there's no way I'm going to pull that out nice. So what I got to do is get in here, pull this back while trying to keep that moving forward. Let me get in a slightly better position. Okay, so we'll pull this. There we go. That's the easiest way of doing that. Now, I'm just gonna pull this off and set it aside up here for right now. Now, it's pretty, sometimes some of these decks can be a little bit harder to remember the belt routing. In general, flat pulley is for the back side of the belt. The the V style pulley is for the inner part of the belt, of the V belt. So like this inner part, this outer part goes here, this inner part goes like that. So that's the general way that happens. Now, I have seen a flat idler used on the front side, and it was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. And I did confirm that it was the correct pulley. It was just odd. I've never seen that before, except for that one weird case. So let's go ahead and get this off in order. So what I was getting at real quick was take a quick picture, just to remember how everything was in position. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that just to show, just in case I had to do anything. Now, I have these belt retainers right here. I got to break loose. So, and under here, I think I'm gonna have to go underneath with a wrench for, I think there's gonna be a, yeah, there is. So the best way of doing this, when I use this for my landscape maintenance business, I kept several of these belts on stock or on hand with me in a toolbox, and I would have to go out in the field and do this sometimes, which just kind of sucks. So what I would normally do is I would ride it up on my ramp on my trailer to lift this end up. In this case, I'm just going to grab a floor jack and lift it up real quick. So lift this up just a little bit. So So all I got to do is I got to break this loose enough so I can get my belt to pop out. I don't loosen these because these can be a little bit more of a pain. And this one is a little easier to access. What sucks is when it's raining, pouring down rain, and I had to do this. Let me loosen this height adjuster. So that's causing a little bit more tension on that bolt than necessary. There we go, that's enough. Well, let me get just a little bit more. Because that was the other thing, is like when you're out there in the grass, or normally I bring this up to my truck, like I said, to the back end of my trailer, then I can loosen that up and get that out from underneath there. I got to do the same thing on this side. And flip this up, slide under here. And what's nice is this, the end of this bolt is in an area of the deck that the grass doesn't get to. So that makes it a little easier. Whereas I think the other one, if I remember correctly, it gets mixed in there. And so you can never really get it. I think these had a standard flange nut that you can kind of, that has like the teeth on the back of it, and you'll lose them. Though after you break them loose, usually you can only do it so many times. So I switched to nylon nuts. There we go. That should be enough to then be able to pop this out like that. This is an Exmark 52-inch turf tracer, the X series. For this particular mower, the deck belt down here is 103-2329. And it's like a 5/8 belt. So what I like to do is kind of get it close so I can hopefully remember most of the routing. Now this is a good time. This belt actually is not, no, it's starting to go. You can see it's starting to crack there. And there's other areas it's starting to crack. I could get some more life out of this, but like probably a season or two with what I'm doing it at home now. But on the field, I wouldn't want to. So all I'm doing is I'm checking. I think I'm hitting with some grass underneath my deck, because there is quite a bit of grass underneath there. I haven't pressure washed it yet, and it's been a little bit. Okay, so all these sound pretty good. These are growling a little bit, but I'm not too worried about these. If this, and there's no play up and down, they are growling a little bit, which is an indicator that the bearings are starting to go dry. Should sound kind of like that. If you're lifting up and down, like this, there shouldn't be really any play. Sometimes there are just a very little bit, even on new, and that's designed by that bearing. As it heats up, it expands and it'll take out that little bit of lash there. So that is by design on some. So keep that in mind. So then this goes around. And what I was getting at is these idlers here, if they were to go, there really isn't a huge amount of tension on these, so I'm not really concerned about it, especially in the field. I've had one go before. Okay, so double checking the belt is all routed, except for here. This is improper. That would be bad. So we got to fix that. That's why you always want to double check. Double check, triple check is how I always say it. So that's the last thing you need to do is, some of these belts are super expensive. I've dealt with like close to $400 belts, deck drive belts, and they were not cheap. So, you know, if you had that on the outside and you started it up and you ran it without checking things, you'd smoke that belt, and trust me, it is not a good thing. So even if this was to go, it would just loosen up the slack on these. So not a big deal. I'm not worried about these. We'll keep those on there. Now let's tighten these up and get that spring reinstalled. I'll go ahead and start on this side since I have my tool over here. Yeah, because to head all the way back to my shop from where I had most of my customers, which was usually in Woodinville, man, it would take me easy an hour to get home and then an hour to get back. So to cut my downtime, I would keep these belts in my truck along with a kit with some tools, just to make sure I can do this on site. And there's many of those days. There we go. That one's nice and tight. What I mean by triple check is, again, even after I tighten everything, do one more check. Because when I put tension on this, lifting up, another thing I'm doing is I'm checking this, making sure there's not a lot of play in this, and this seems pretty good. But I will grease that Zerk fitting before I put everything together. Okay, so all of this looks good. Perfect. I want to kind of show you more so of how I would have to do this more out in the field. So even if you had ratchet strap like this, which I would have some of this, you can take this out, take this in, so now you got a nice long one. Get it underneath your mower, through here, loop this over, and on this, I think I ended up grabbing two. I'll show you why. So that's what I mean. Sometimes you just got to get creative, especially when you're out there all by yourself doing this. So one issue I'm having is I need to keep this back. In order to keep that back, I need to be able to slip under here like that and pull enough. This is where I think I kind of loop it on my leg down low. There we go. Whip it around my leg. To help kind of pull it back. And then I can reach over here and whip this around my hand. Use this. pull this up. Just like that. So this is what I mean. You got to get creative. So what I did on this side is, what's nice is if you have a nice long strap, you can pull it back, pull it up along the side like this on my mower over here. Then with my leg, pull that back just to get that in place. And then I reefed on it enough to get the spring to extend far enough that I can then lift up and pop it in place. So that's what I mean. Sometimes you just got to get creative. Especially when you're out there by yourself, you got no one else you can call on, or you don't have a lot of time to wait. Or if you are calling for someone and you're waiting, try something. That's the thing. There's not all the time one tool for the job. You can do all kinds of different things. Unfortunately, there's nothing here, no square head that I can just reef on to pop that spring in, nothing. So usually you see it on an arm, maybe out here, nothing. Okay, so now that this is installed, that's all good. Let's go ahead and we're gonna lift this up a little bit. We're gonna pull the drive belt. That should basically be just hanging there. We're gonna replace that belt for this mower. Most of these Exmark X series, actually, this is a pretty common number for that, for their drive belt. It's 109, Exmark 109 254 84. And then for the engine to deck belt, for this particular mower being 52 inch, 603 306. Technically there's a 1 dash in there. I'm going to remove my Velky wheel. Let me grab some floor jacks. And I'll lower this on the floor jack. So one tip, especially if you have wet ground and stuff, you can always throw a mat down or whatever. When we get generators and stuff in, this is the packing that goes in along the sides to help kind of protect it. I just kept quite a few of these, and I use them as mats here and there as necessary. You can buy some. Most of the time I don't use anything, but since this is all wet, I really don't want to get soaked. So let's check this out. Okay, so this belt goes essentially like this, if I remember correctly. So check your bearings while you're in here. These are the 2 pumps and stuff. I'm just checking to see if I feel anything, and everything feels fine. In terms of this belt, yeah, see, they're starting to crack. You can see, let's see if I can show you that. So you can see that they're starting to crack in there. Nothing sucks more than when these fail, especially on a job. Because yeah, you got to get in here, you got to pull the clutch, a bar down. I mean, it's not impossible. I mean, I've done it in the field quite a few times. And yeah, you can see my mower was definitely leaking oil and stuff. So let's go ahead and replace this belt. So let's get that off. What we got to do, what I do, is I usually loosen this just enough. Man, that was definitely in there. So I loosen that just enough. I don't take it out normally, so I can slip the belt out from on top. Sometimes you don't always have to take things off all the way, but I think usually I have to flip the belt, get the flat side, because there is a bolt on top of this pulley. Let me take, oh, I can't take this off because this has the washers on it. So let me loosen this up a little bit more. Anything more is going to come off. There we go. And it does look like I gotta take this off. So let's see. Then put that back on just so I don't lose anything. There we go. So that belt is removed. Grab the other one. Should have uncurled it first, because then I could have put that back on during the exact same time. So now, hold this in place so I don't lose anything. So basically it's this nut, this washer, this little collar here, and then I'm just going to hold that with my finger. And then unfortunately my belt, so this is the collar, my belt recurled on itself. Like that. Get this back on. Then the washer. And then the nut. And before I tighten that one, I'm gonna go ahead and tighten this one up. Then we'll tighten this one up. So I need to back it because there's the bolt. So I need to grab another 9/16 real quick. Okay, so I need to back this top of the bolt. Oop, I'm going the wrong direction. There we go. And just making sure that's still spinning nicely and all of that is good. So now that we have that done, we are now ready to reinstall the engine. So let's go ahead and proceed with that. Okay, so this is that drive belt. It's a cog style, and you can see it's starting to crack. So that's why it's time to replace it. Now that we have the deck belt replaced and everything, and the drive belt replaced, we're now at a position that we need to reinstall our engine. So let's get these bolts removed. I'm actually going to set them in here, just out of the way, and they're looking at the same length so far. Yep. And I want to make sure the cables are out of the way. We have our fuel line right here. That's up out of the way. These are out of the way. This is our ground. That will go over there. That's out of the way. So now I can grab the engine and place it there. Now I don't recommend pulling on the air filter area. Grab like the valve cover and kind of rotate it. This is why you want to make sure everything's out of your way first, especially if you're doing some of this by yourself. Now I'm going to get a bolt installed. Just kind of slide this in place and reach up in there. So I just got it in place. I pulled the engine to kind of pinch that bolt. Now I got to reach in here and get it at least started. This nut, this is where it gets very challenging, because you have to, what I've found is best, you set it there, and then I have to go and reach underneath here. Well, in this case, I got lucky. I was able to start it on top. Okay, so now we got that started. We'll leave that loose. Go over here onto the other side and do the exact same thing. So I'm gonna reach under here. I can see it. I'm gonna grab my exhaust. Wiggle the engine around. There's my bolt. I got to reach in here. Okay, so now I got it on there. I can usually spin the bolt. There we go. I got it started. Now, this one has my ground, which is this wire right here. So I need to reach in under here, get my bolt through. And this is why you want to keep the engine loose, because not everything is perfect yet. And then I'm going to keep my hand in here. It's kind of hard to. Let me grab my ground wires, kind of fighting me. There we go. Had to move the upper part of the wire. There we go, now I got this slipped on there. And I gotta try to get this nut on top. See if I can, since it's a flange nut, I'm gonna see if I can flip it in on top, right there. Yep, just like that. And underneath, I can run it, tighten it up by hand. So I have it in there now. Now we have one more to do. While I'm here, I'm gonna tuck our drain tube right there. Now, reminder, there is no oil in that engine. I normally put it in there beforehand, but I did it in this case. So we have our last engine mounting bolt that we need to get in place over there. We don't want to forget the ground strap for the EFI, which is this guy. So I'm going to stick this bolt up and through there. And whoops, I got to move this engine a little bit. Now that I got it up there, I'm going to set this on there like so. But before I run that, I need to get my ground strap in place. There we go. I had it and then it popped up. So it's right there like that. Now I got to be careful, and I got to juggle this, get this in there, and I'm going to try to flip it on top. And I got it. So now I'm turning the bottom bolt just like that. So I got her. So now that I got the engine in place, I'm going to hold this wrench on top and then use a 1/2 inch impact from underneath and tighten everything. There we go. Now that the engine is mounted and properly secured, we have this breather tube that goes to the gas tank vent, and then we have our fuel line, and we have our throttle position sensor, or not, I'm sorry, throttle cable on this side. So let me grab a 5/16. So we'll install our throttle cable, and this is why it's handy to make a little note on where it was on here. Even on here, I put a yellow tag with paint to know that it belongs there. Now let's loosen this up so we can slip this underneath. And with our throttle down all the way, pushing this over, so this is at complete idle. Put our little dust cover back on, and now we are good for our throttle. Now I made sure it's adjusted all the way over that way. If I have to make any adjustments, I will from there, even though it's not exactly the same. Now, with our breather tube, this went underneath the gas tank, goes up the side of the tank, all the way up to this breather tube right up here. So we'll plug this in, and okay, we're gonna put a new fuel filter on this. I already replaced the air filter, by the way. I did that off camera. But we have our fuel line. So on this fuel line, I just took this hose clamp off. On this fuel line here, we have this braided stuff, which is nice. But the problem is when they put this on here, they never treated this end. I'm gonna show you what you gotta do to make sure that that doesn't happen. So we'll cut this in cleanly, and then we'll take our torch usually I would use what do you call it, a Bic lighter. It'd be better for that. Let's see if I can turn this down a little bit more. And what that does is it helps kind of hold all of that to reduce the chances of that all separating like that. So now we can take this fuel line off. There we go. So this went, we'll put this piece back on. Pull this back further and get this one back on. And we're gonna get our new fuel filter, but I need to make sure I know fuel's going this way. So some of these have an arrow for direction, and we wanna make sure the fuel is flowing this way. So this is hooking up just like that. We'll pull this back. This hooks up here. And we have our fuel line here with that disconnected. I'm gonna open this for a split second. There we go. Get some fuel flowing through that just to clean it out. There we go. That is on there. I'm gonna leave I can turn on my fuel. So fuel's on. Now everything else should be connected and good. Everything does look good on here. And what I always do is like, I make sure these like hose clamps and stuff are facing in a direction that aren't gonna be rubbing on something like this. I'll probably make sure they're pointed more up, just to make sure. Okay, so everything is hooked up here. I did notice, I don't know if I'm having a fuel pump issue. I actually might have a fuel pump issue going on, so I might have to replace that. So I'm gonna turn off the fuel valve for now. This is why I always like to kind of turn them on while I'm working on things, because if something was to happen, I could hopefully see. But I have a feeling this diaphragm may have just failed. So I'll come back to that, but everything else is hooked up on this side so far. Let's go to the other side and finish hooking up everything over there. On this side, we're left with our 2 positive leads and our main connection here. So basically for the starter, gotta pull this nut off along with lock washer. And what I personally like doing is applying some dielectric grease on this stuff. Just kind of rub it in your fingers, coat everything. It helps reduce corrosion and stuff. I'm going to do the same thing for our starter solenoid connection. This is if this gets 12 volts, it'll energize that starter solenoid. And then we'll get this wire hooked up in here first, and then this wire. Then I'll get my lock nut, or lock washer and nut installed. Now when you go to tighten these starter nuts, don't go crazy. Just get that lock washer flat. That's all you really got to do. That's flush. And last time I had to heat this up because this is pretty rigid, so let me grab my heat gun and just kind of soften that up. So, but before I do that, I'm just going to apply a little bit more dielectric grease on the outside. Kind of just coat everything. And let's grab that heat gun. So with my heat gun, I'm going to go ahead and disconnect this starter solenoid wire. Just kind of move it out of the way a little bit. I'm going to just lightly heat up this just to make it more pliable, so I can then get in here and kind of reconnect it. There we go, just like that. Now I can take this. The reason why I wanted to make sure that was back on is if you look right here where the starter solenoid wire is that I'm just connecting, right over here on this side especially, it's so close to this that if those two touched for whatever reason, this could be constantly on if this was to ever move. And so that's why I made sure. Now, we're gonna get some dielectric grease on the ends of the contacts. We're gonna go ahead and hook this up, and it is being retained now. Okay, so now that we got everything hooked up on this side, let's go ahead and get our clutch reinstalled. Okay, so I'm gonna wipe off the shaft. Already had some kind of grease on it, which is fine, but I'm gonna put dielectric grease on it. And this is also making sure that there's no junk sticking to it. So grab some of my, I'm sorry, not dielectric grease, anti-seize. So we'll apply some anti-seize on here. So coating it pretty good. Now, I almost forgot there's a key for the upper pulley. So let me grab that key real quick. Now that we got the anti-seize on there, I have the key. It's key stock. And before I put it on, I just want to see how everything's looking. Everything's looking good. So I'll put that in. And I can't see, but I can hold it like so. Now on this one, it's a little easier to manage, but normally I can take this what I'm going to do is it's easier if you can rotate the engine, and I can't really grip it enough down here to rotate it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take that fan cover guard off so I can rotate the engine, because when I have it on here, if I rotate the engine like this, it'll just pop it right in place. What I did is I took this fan guard off, and I'm going to set it aside. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this, but I need to rotate it in the proper direction that's going to pop that belt in place. So I'll put the camera down there and show you. And I'm just going to confirm I need to rotate clockwise. And that's the easiest way of getting that on there. Now, it has some tension on it, but it might need to get adjusted. So what I might have to do is I might have to loosen this bolt up and apply a little bit more tension on this, because it seems a little soft. Yeah, it's basically bottomed out. So what I can do is let's adjust that now, because that's going to be an issue. So what I got to do is loosen this up, and then I can rotate this to apply more tension on that. I believe, yeah, it's 1/2 inch. There we go. There we go. Now, that has a lot more tension on it, so it's not going to slip on me. Now that we have our drive system, pulley, and belt installed, we need to install the clutch. Now, we still got plenty of anti-seize on there. I'm going to put a little bit of anti-seize on the end of this bolt for the output shaft of the engine that holds the clutch assembly up. And then what I got to do is, in here there's a built-in key, and you can rotate the bearing here and get that in roughly the position it needs to be, which is probably about right there. This can be kind of a pain. There we go. We're in place. just get it started. And now I need to get this loose, or take this nut off and run this bolt up through that hole and get this nut installed on top, which is right there. So this nut goes on there like so. Then we got to get this tight while holding the wrench up on top. And now that is installed, except we got to tighten up our bolt for our clutch. Now what this does is this makes sure that this clutch, when it's engaged, does not spin. So it's extremely important. This is how the Exmark mower works. On some of the John Deeres and others, they'll have a bar that comes out and that it sticks up or down, that goes into a slot like this here. And then we can plug this back in. But before I plug it in, I'm going to put some dielectric grease on that. So we'll plug our clutch back in, and I apply some dielectric grease to it, especially a little bit on the outside. It just makes it a little easier to unplug, because sometimes these get pretty sticky. So now that is properly secured. But one thing I forgot is we need to install our belt. So all we got to do is just loosen this up and disconnect this. So let me do that real quick. So I forgot to put this belt on. This belt for the engine to deck is 1-603-306. And then we want to unravel it, slide it above, and then get it over this. So now it's inside there, and we'll get this reinstalled just like we did before. Reconnect this. Okay. Now we can pull this back and go up to the front to install our engine to deck belt. So we got to get our engine to deck belt, and I need to make sure it is in its spot in that pulley, and it is. And we got to get it here, and what I always like to do is you can reach down, grab a blade, and rotate it. And on this one, normally I don't have to pull it, but pull the spring, but we can get that. Just like that. Then we'll rotate it, make sure everything is working as it should. Everything looks good. So before I start this up, there's a few things left. The fuel pump I'm gonna have to replace. So we're gonna replace that real quick. We need to grease the Zerk fittings on the deck and underneath, and then we need to put engine oil in there before we can start it up. So let's go ahead and grease the Zerk fittings real quick. Oh, and get this fan cover reinstalled. There we go. Grab my grease gun. And then we have a Zerk fitting here. We have a Zerk fitting here. A Zerk fitting here. And I'm gonna hit the Zerk fitting that I see here along with our other one right here. So we're going to start with replacing this fuel pump. Just take these 2 bolts off. Now I'd fix this piece here, all this shredded stuff. I'll probably I might snip it, but I actually might just leave it just because it'll be more of a pain than anything. And here's our new fuel pump. I'm just gonna go ahead and just swap things over as I take them off. Yeah, this is our breather, and we had some fuel in there, so the diaphragm inside that fuel pump is bad. And then this is our fuel line that goes to the high pressure fuel pump. Yeah, to slide this all down is not going to be easy, so I'm just going to leave that. I'll probably come in here later and cut that. I'm going to slide that over. Oh, almost forgot again. There we go. Now I'll turn this one on. We should be good. No more leakage. Okay, so last but not least, let's go ahead and get this removed from the floor jacks, and so we can put some oil in this. So I think this takes about 2 1/4 quarts. I'm gonna go to 1 3/4 and see where it's at. And we are about midway on the stick. I'm gonna go up another 1/4. So we're at 2. It's probably gonna be 2 1/4 once it goes through that oil filter. Yeah, so now we're at full. So I'm gonna start it up for a second, but before we can do that, I need to reinstall our ground to the battery, because we did disconnect that. There we go. All right, so we got oil. We have everything bolted up, fuel's on, everything should be good. Now, being that this is EFI, when I turn this key, I will hear the fuel pump whine. I'm gonna do that a couple times, and then I'll go ahead and crank it over and see if she fires up. And let's go. Hear the fuel pump. I'm gonna turn it off, do it again. Okay. So I wonder if it's the starter. So right now, I can hear, aha, there we go. It's probably actually my starter, because I pressure wash everything. Sometimes that starter Bendix, I've noticed, has stuck before. So I think that's what that was. Cool, so let's check oil real quick and then we'll run it a little longer because the ECU is going to have to recalibrate to this engine. You can reset it, but it'll sort it out. So now we got 2 1/4 quarts total. Yeah, right up full. All right, let's start her up. So far, everything looks good. There's going to be a little bit of burning off of some oils and stuff. One thing I don't think I have this belt properly routed for the drive system, because this doesn't seem, so I know what I did wrong. This, because I noticed when it was coming out, when the engine was rotating, this was kind of flinging out. What this is supposed to be, this is supposed to be behind here. So I messed up when routing this, so we're gonna correct this. This up here is 1/2 inch. So I'm gonna loosen this up and get this straight to how it was before. There we go. And then this one's 9/16. See, even I make mistakes here and there, but this is why I always double check things. I think the easiest way in this case might be to loosen this up quite a bit. There we go. And then pull this this way. Now, yeah, that's definitely right. This is why I always double check things, because something didn't seem right. I didn't have to do that. I don't ever remember having to do that. There we go. I'll make sure this is nice and tight. Yep, that is on there. And this is in its place all along here, all along this pulley, all around here, making sure, feel back around here, that is not slipped down, and everything looks good. All right, so now we are under proper tension. That makes perfect sense. So let's go ahead and start this up again, and this time we'll test it with the PTO. So in case you're wondering, basically there's supposed to be a handle here. I have the handle. It broke off on this plate here. There's a few things I still need to fix. So what I've been doing is I've been reaching under here, grabbing this arm to shift it up. And then of course, you know, move it forward and back from here. So overall, there's a few more things I gotta do. Gotta install the tins. I'm gonna do a hydraulic fluid change on that. To do that, I basically jack it up, remove that filter. This is the reservoir for it. Lift it up and then replace the filter, drain the fluids, install a new filter, fill it up, lift it up though, and then I put this in bypass. Run it near full speed, and then close off the bypass, cycle it through to get the fluids completely circulating through. And once you do that, everything's good to go. So outside of that, in placing the tins and a few other things, we're good to go, but at least I'm now back in business. You'll get these stickers showing the new serial number, spec number, and all that stuff. That's important stuff. So when you get stuff like this, take your air filter off, clean the inside, and install your new sticker on the inside. The reason being is these are just stickers, and the problem is on the outside, it's known to hit the elements and everything, and so I'm actually going to stick the other sticker in here too. It's the same thing, but this one, it's a little larger to read, because these usually will eventually start to peel, making it difficult to, you'll have to look through like your log books or something, you know, but at least it's now protected. So you can put that in there, it's closed up, it's protected, and you can still access your model, or in this case, spec number and serial number. All right, so just got done with everything. Did a hydraulic fluid change, replaced the E-clip that was missing there, fixed my shifter thing, and sharpened balanced blades, cleaned it underneath the motor deck, everything. So everything is completely serviced on this, including making sure the deck's level and stuff. So now I can finally mow. So it's been a few weeks, so let's go. As you can see, it's getting pretty tall.
I'm super excited.